Good afternoon. Please tell us who you are.
Good,
Tell us your name, your professional background.
good afternoon. Good afternoon, Tim. I'm Prudence Pollard, and my professional background is that I'm professor of management here at Oakwood University. I also serve as assistant vice president for faculty development and leadership development as well.
So leadership development is all in and through you.
It's what I'm trained to do.
Tell me about your training as a leadership development specialist.
I have a PhD in evaluation, measurement, and research design. My specialty is in the evaluation of executive development programs. So that means leadership development for executives in corporations.
Now, there was also a training that you had, and there are two, arguably three examples of the training that you've had in terms of family development.
Ah,
Tell me about those two or those three.
those two or three, I'm trying to figure out. Are you trying
The
to,
third one is the one who's older than you.
the older, the one that's older, you mean the two that challenged me to write the book?
Yes,
Ah,
precisely.
okay. I do have two daughters, two beautiful daughters, Kristen Marie and Karen Elise. Kristen is my older daughter, and Karen is my younger daughter. One lives in Georgia, the other in California. I was blessed to have them enter my life, our lives, my husband's life and mine. We consider ourselves to be parenting partners, and our daughters entered our lives 28 plus years ago, and we have been blessed.
Very good. Now you're blessing us with compiling those experiences. Tell us about your new book.
Raise a Leader. This book actually began with my older daughter. We had read so many books and could not find the one book that made it simple enough. You might say, why would a person with a PhD need a simple book? Because child rearing is so scary. You have a little life that you are to raise, to care for. And I did not get my degree in how to raise my child. And so it was nerve-wracking those first couple of years, and even before they were born, because I culled all the books, I read everything. I have a whole library of books on parenting, raising children before they're even born. And I couldn't find the book that made it easy for me, where I could remember specifically what I need to do at different stages, but also to prepare individuals to have the values, to transmit the values that my husband and I find so life-changing and so transformational. How do you transfer those to your child? We could not find the book that allowed us to do that. And so I began to read, and luckily I took notes. I just simply took notes because I'm a reflective learner. So I took notes on everything. And this book was actually finished or finally written last year on a trip from Dusseldorf, Germany, down to Portugal. I would actually reserved a sleeper car so that I could write the entire distance. And I wrote the book not as a book, but simply as a manuscript. Something where I had to get it out of my head and onto paper.
What's the difference between writing a book and writing a manuscript?
I don't know. I only know what it is to write a manuscript. Because this is my first book. I've written chapters before for books, and I've written scholarly articles. But writing a book that is not a scholarly book, how do you write that, but still use the knowledge from your scholarship and infuse that into the book? I had never done that before. So all I know to do is to write the book as if I was writing a book that I would want to read. And so I just wrote it down. It became a book not because of me.
Okay.
I shared it with a colleague who happens to be a book publisher. And I only shared it with him because he heard me do a workshop. And I shared with him that there is actually a whole script behind the workshop. And he said that he wanted to read the script. I shared it with him, and he shared it with his acquisitions editor. The acquisitions editor wrote me an email a week later and said, "Prudence, this is the book that I needed 45 years ago." And she said, "It is too late for me, but it's not too late for my children, and it's not too late for my grandchildren who are raising children." And so she took the manuscript and it became the book. So a special thanks to the Review and Herald Publishing Association, because they're the ones who made my thoughts possible to be shared with others.
All right, thank you. Now, let's look at this book, for example, Raise a Leader God's Way. Now, is it important that we raise children to be leaders? Why can't they just be children?
And they don't have to be even raised in God's way.
Unpack that for us.
This book is aimed primarily at individuals who believe the Christian way. Individuals who claim God, claim Jesus Christ, because it is Jesus who told us in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that we ought to have certain internal traits. And those traits are there so that we can live lives that bring glory to God. Matthew 5, Luke 6. But it's not just the New Testament. It's all over the Old Testament. Although for some it's difficult to really find it in the Older Testament. But Exodus 20, character values. How do we show love to God? And how does that love to God help us to show love to our fellow humans? That's what the book is about. So how do you, from the moment a child is born, how do you understand the way in which that child should go? The child's personality. That's the way he or she should go. We're not to take our children and turn them into little mini-me's. My children are not a replication of who I am. They're individual, unique creations of God, designed not to give glory to me, but to give glory to God.
Is it important that a child be programmed, if that's the right word, to become a leader?
Very good word. Programmed to become a leader. I deal with the concept of control in the book. And our children are not there for us to control. They're there for us to guide in the way that their personality. Some children have certain aptitude or certain for example, intelligence. If a child is not the brightest in the classroom, why frustrate them and tell them that they should be the brightest? You're simply frustrating that child. A child might have more of an aptitude for the arts as opposed to maybe math or the sciences.
How can you know this?
By testing. They're experts. They're people who are specialists. That's one of the beauty of knowing one's lane in life. I know what my lane is, so I go to the people who know. For example, my children have been tested since they were 3 years old, so that I could know what was going on inside their heads, so that I could help to guide them, because I am the person God has entrusted them to. And so I need to understand who they are so I can guide them appropriately. I can't assume that I know them simply because of their behaviors. I have to know how they have been wonderfully made by God.
Let me understand this. You were saying the fact that what we have to do is start with their personality, and their personality helps to drive or helps to program the leadership development?
Oh, sure. For example, if your child at around up to say age 3 or so, they tend to love to tell stories. And so when a child loves to tell stories, how do they tell that story? A child who's much more artistic will want to dramatize the story, act out the story, maybe even have that, although they can't write, they might want to vocalize the story or show the story through drama, through the narrative that they now display in front of you as you sit as the adoring audience. The child who is much more analytical might engage you in a conversation, still not able to write, but engage you in this conversation that can frustrate some parents who are not prepared to deal with an analytical mind. So understanding that takes not just a study of the child, but the parent understanding how we are wonderfully made. Most parents don't know that they need to pay attention to how their children play. And by paying attention, actually sit and study without a preconceived notion of what that child is. By understanding that, I can then understand how to communicate God's messages, those character traits, to that child. So the child who likes to dramatize. Let's talk about loving others. How should I demonstrate mercy when I'm on the playground and someone pushes me off the jungle gym or cuts in front of me trying to go down the slide? So just stepping into a child's world and understanding their personality, I can now say, okay, when we go back home, let's think about what this means. How would you dramatize this to the child who loves to dramatize? The one who likes to have that verbal conversation. Let's talk about this. So I'm working through my child's aptitude, through my child's personality to get the message across.
Now, it seems to me what you're saying is a radical departure from what we typically hear, is the fact that we've got to shape children to be the mini me's. And you're saying that I, as a parent, need to listen with my eyes and listen with my ears before I hand down a mandate. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and also listen with the heart.
Okay.
And also because mercy.
Okay.
Children need a lot of mercy. We can deal with that later on as well. Because, for example, the 3-year-old, a friend told me yesterday, after reading the book, her young son is 4 years old. He threw a softball, and broke the television, an extremely expensive television. A 4-year-old. She remembered having read the stages and the descriptions in the book of what a child is capable of understanding and incapable of understanding. And she said, my child does not understand the value of money in the same way I understand money. So how can I get angry at my child for destroying this extremely expensive piece of furniture? She said she and her husband had to back up and stop and think, and they realized that all we can do is talk to our son about how he will manage his energy, where he will go when he wants to play with his ball.
With this, you have the ability to be burned at the stake like Joan of Arc.
Many parents who want to spank that child, who want to be angry, and that gets into the part of the book that you like, the time out.
Yes. Please talk about that, because what it sounds like you're saying here is, as opposed to striking out at the product, parents need to address the process and to work within a value system that a child can understand. You even have gone so far with your radical self to talk about when a child is, and I think you used the word to me, when your child became difficult, how we would traditionally put the child in timeout. You were suggesting that you, as the parent, would put yourself in timeout. Please explain that.